Hi and welcome back. Over the next 2 lessons, we're going to focus on the major muscles of the arms. So take your time with it, watch the videos as often as you want, but 1 per week. Download the audio files, listen to it and repeat. Practice, practice, practice. Build your confidence in listening to, hearing the names of the muscles and saying the names of the muscles. I hope you're enjoying the course and I'll see you in the next section.
Arm and hand muscles, Part 1. Deltoid. The origin of the deltoid is the lateral third of the clavicle, acromion process and spine of the scapula. The insertion of the deltoid is the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. The action of the anterior deltoid is to flex and medially rotate the humerus. The action of the middle deltoid is to abduct the humerus between 15 and 90 degrees. The action of the posterior deltoid is to extend and laterally rotate the humerus. Deltoid. Subscapularis. The origin of the subscapularis is the anterior fossa of the scapula. The insertion of the subscapularis is the lesser tubercle of the humerus. The action of the subscapularis is to medially rotate the humerus, adduct the humerus, and stabilize the shoulder joint. Subscapularis. Biceps Brachii. The origin of the Biceps Brachii long head is the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. The origin of the Biceps Brachii short head is the coracoid process of the scapula. The insertion of the Biceps Brachii is the radial and ulnar tuberosity. The action of the Biceps Brachii is to flex and supinate the forearm and flex the humerus at the shoulder. Biceps Brachii. Brachialis. The origin of the Brachialis is distal anterior humerus. The insertion of the Brachialis is the ulnar tuberosity. The action of the Brachialis is to flex the elbow. Brachialis. Brachioradialis. The origin of the Brachioradialis is the lateral border of the distal humerus. The insertion of the Brachioradialis is the styloid process of the radius. The action of the Brachioradialis is to flex the elbow, supinate and pronate the forearm. Brachioradialis. Triceps Brachii. The origin of the Triceps Brachii long head is the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. The lateral head is the posterior proximal humerus. and the deep or medial head is the posterior distal humerus. The insertion of the Triceps Brachii is the ulcranon of the ulna. The action of the Triceps Brachii is to extend the elbow, extend and adduct the shoulder. Triceps Brachii. Pronator Teres. The origin of the Pronator Teres is medial epicondyle of the humerus and coronoid process of the ulna. The insertion of the Pronator Teres is the middle lateral surface of the radius. The action of the Pronator Teres is to pronate the forearm and flex the elbow. Pronator Teres. Wrist flexors. Flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, palmaris longus. The origin of the wrist flexors is anterior medial epicondyle of the humerus. The insertion of the wrist flexors is the anterior carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. The action of the wrist flexors is to flex the wrist. Flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, palmaris longus. Wrist flexors. Arm and hand muscles, Part 2. Wrist extensors. Extensor carpi radialis longus, Extensor carpi radialis brevis, Extensor carpi ulnaris. The origin of the wrist extensors is the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. The insertion of the wrist extensors is posterior 2, 3 and 5 metacarpals. The action of the wrist extensors are to extend the wrist. Extensor carpi radialis longus, Extensor carpi radialis brevis, Extensor carpi ulnaris. Wrist extensors. Finger flexors. Flexor digitorum superficialis, Flexor digitorum profundus, Flexor Pollicis longus. The origin of the finger flexors, the medial epicondyle of the humerus, anterior radius and medial anterior of the ulna. The insertion of the finger flexors is the anterior fingers 2 to 5 and the thumb. The action of the finger flexors is to flex the fingers and the thumb. Flexor Digitorum superficialis. Flexor Digitorum profundus. Flexor Pollicis longus. Finger flexors. Finger extensors. Extensor digitorum. Extensor Pollicis longus. Extensor Pollicis brevis. The origin of the finger extensors is the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, posterior ulna and radius. The insertion of the finger extensors is posterior fingers 2 to 5 and distal thumb. The action of the finger extensors is to extend fingers and thumb and abduct the fingers. Extensor digitorum. Extensor Pollicis longus. Extensor Pollicis brevis. Finger extensors. Abductor Pollicis longus. Abductor Pollicis brevis. The origin of the Abductor Pollicis longus is posterior ulna and radius. The insertion of the Abductor Pollicis longus is the base of the first metacarpal. The origin of the Abductor Pollicis brevis is the posterior carpal ligaments. The insertion of the Abductor Pollicis brevis is proximal phalanx of the thumb. The action of these muscles is to abduct the thumb. Abductor Pollicis longus. Abductor Pollicis brevis. Adductor Pollicis. The origin of the Adductor Pollicis is the second and third metacarpals and carpal bones. The insertion of the Adductor Pollicis is anterior proximal phalanx of the thumb. The action of the Adductor Pollicis is to adduct the thumb. Adductor Pollicis.